Hello and welcome to this game review. So this is a blitz game, so the quality will not be very high, but nonetheless we can look at some positional and strategic ideas from the Stonewall. So d4 and f4. So white makes his intentions clear. He is going to try to fight for the square on e5, but in the meantime he has terribly weakened the square on e4, while we can take it with d5 and put our pieces there. Well, also we can always play f6 in the long term to prevent the opponent to taking away this square. So this is why this strategy by white doesn't really work, because he is losing the square forever, as none of these pawns can go back. Well, we still have the f6 pawn if needed. So black plays e6, which is fine as well, but this kind of closes this bishop, which means it will have to go to b7. So knight f3, c5, so this is okay, and knight c6. But if we're going to play with e6, maybe we should just play b6 and bishop b7 and put the knight on d7 to not block our bishop. Because here, black's only kind of idea would be to probably play d5 anyway, because white's main idea here is f5, and so we should probably be aware of this. And still, the e4 square is the main thing in this position. So at this point, black already should think about how to stop f5, because this is a pawn break which white will benefit from, opening up the f-file, while black doesn't really have compensation yet. So he plays bishop e7, which is a natural move, but instead maybe g6, which isn't very normal, but we will put the bishop on g7, and most importantly, f5 will not be played. And if white doesn't have f5, it's not clear what exactly he is doing. While we're not playing d5, the point is to put the pawn on d6 to control the square on e5, and slowly remaneuver this knight somewhere else. For example, knight bd2, we can play bishop g7. It's not clear what white wants here. For example, knight c4 going here, we can go queen c7. It's not clear what white is trying to do. For example, once we finish development, we can then play knight e7, and the main idea is probably to play the minority attack with b5, b4, creating a weakness on c3, and then hopefully targeting it. While if white doesn't have f5, it's not clear what they want to do. So bishop e7, now f5 was available, but this was played. Now rook c8, which is somewhat natural, but it doesn't really do much. Black could continue with queen c7, attacking this pawn, and if f5, we can now play e5, importantly, keeping the f-file closed, which is of course still quite dangerous because our stuff will be on the e-file, but black is in time to move away. Instead rook c8, but now f5 is quite strong for white, and white has ideas of knight g5 at some point, trying to pressure these squares, maybe knight e4 to get rid of the opponent's defenders, and the bishop can come out to g5. Because currently this bishop is always blocked in. This is also a problem for white. Queen e2, knight d5, the opponent improves his pieces, and now h6, but this was the last chance to stop f5. We should play f5 ourselves at this point. This does weaken the square on e5 considerably, but since we still have the pawn on d7, we can always play d6 at some point. For example, the knight can move, we can castle, the e6 point is strong, and our main plan is usually to play b5 and b4, while we can also remaneuver our pieces towards the square on e4. And white doesn't really have many ways to attack here. He might try to play g4 or something, but black is in time with his resources as well. But now h6, bishop d2, knight c7, but this doesn't really do much. Again, f5 should be played. He can move the knight away, we can go castles. Bishop f6, maybe move the knight away from here as it's blocking this bishop, and try to play potentially a6, b5 or something similar. Or maybe bishop d6 and g5 at some point might also be considered. But bishop knight c7, now again we should stop f5, but now it's a bit too late. f5 did not really help, and white now has opened his pieces. Our pieces don't have much space, and from here it was all quite one-sided. Black did not really do much, and after g6 white has an easy piece sacrifice with bishop takes h6, but other moves win as well. At this point something like b5 should be played to play b4, but already we can tell it's a bit too late for positional plans. All of the opponent's pieces are on the king side, while we only have basically one defender, so the game is more or less over. So this happened, and white attacked, and more or less did not make any significant mistakes until here, giving up the bishop on h6. He could play bishop g5, and this would win the game as there is no one defending from rook takes f7, either winning the queen or the rook. But rook f7 here was played, king h6 and g3. So here black is winning because white he has two pieces up and white only has two attackers here. Here rook e to e7 would still make a draw somehow after black gives away the queen to defend. And this strange position is about equal, but of course anyone can win. After g3, black should be able to win with knight e6 or any other move. Queen g5 is not very accurate, as now this takes away the square from the king. After queen d7, we should play rook h8, defending from mate here. Of course, we are losing a piece, but after moving the bishop, we do have a bishop. We have some ideas of going here or h4, so white should be careful as well. After queen d5, this is checkmate after rook h7 and rook e5. White is winning the queen with checks, and also he can also even checkmate here after king f6, queen f7. But winning the queen is quite enough. So again, this is a blitz game, so the quality was not very high, but the general ideas for black are to either not allow white to play f5 or to fight for the e4 square more directly. For example, d5, put the bishop on f5, play e6, eventually play c5, and white shouldn't really have much of an advantage here, if any.